Hi, we're out on the range today, so bear with me if you hear gunfire in the background. I want to show you today a few muzzle-loading black powder firearms. Black powder firearms can be a lot of fun. However, they are a little bit slow-paced. That being the case, I'm going to try to make this as brief as I can. So this is not an in-depth expose on muzzle-loading firearms. It's just a brief intro to a few of them that I think are cool. That having been said, let's get going. When you store these, you store them with a lot of oil on them. So typically you'll want to take your capper and put a cap on there and just shoot a cap with the rifle not loaded and burn that out. Well, I've already done this, so let's get right to loading it. I've got a powder measure, and I'm using 2F black powder. The number of Fs you have tells you how finely it's ground. This is 2F. 3F's probably the most common. I always load directly into the measure. Never pour powder from the horn or flask into the barrel. After you get your powder in there, you take your projectile, which is just a 5/3/0 diameter lead sphere, and you get into your little thing here in the stock called a patch box and get a patch. Now, a lot of people make patches. I buy them because it's so much easier to do. These are 15 thousandths thickness, and they come in different thicknesses. These are pre-lubed. Some you buy are dry. The pre-lubed ones are good if you're going to leave the rifle loaded for a while, like you're hunting. On the range, when you're shooting a lot, the pre-lubed ones lend themselves to fouling the barrel more. So, to alleviate that, we do what we call a spit patch. Some people will spray these with 409. Over the years, I've developed a taste for them. Then you start the ball down the barrel just a little bit. This neat little gadget you use to start your ball is called a ball starter. And then you take your ramrod and push it all the way down. It's got to be tight against the powder. See how easy this goes down? That's pretty much all the way. It should go down that easy. If it's not, your barrel is fouled or you're using the wrong components. Now you see how you get that dull thud? It's not all the way down. When it bounces, it's tight against the powder. Sometimes you'll see people have their ramrod marked at where the right depth is. This is marked, but it's hard to see it on film. And after that, then we'll get it capped and we're ready to shoot. One of the safety concerns about these is the great majority of muzzle-loading rifles require that they be cocked to get the cap on. And then once you get that cap on there, you have to lower the hammer on it, push it forward, make sure it's seated to give you a better chance of it going off. You can see the safety concern. Now, one of the things you'll notice about this rifle is it has two triggers. If I cock the hammer and pull the front trigger, it'll go off, but it's a tough trigger pull. If you pull the rear trigger till it clicks, now the front trigger is set, and it's a very light trigger pull. I've got a target down here at 50 yards. We'll shoot a few shots at it, see what kind of group I can hold. One of the things of muzzle-loading rifles is it's a very common misconception that they're not very accurate. Let's see if we can disprove that. I'll shoot a few more shots, but I won't make you sit through the painful process of watching me reload and shoot all of them. Now we're reloaded for our second shot. I want to emphasize that there's a lot of different ways to do this. This is just the way I do it. There's many different techniques people have. And then we go through the process again. And we're ready for our third shot. Misfire. When that happens, the cap didn't go off, so you don't have to get too freaked out. All you do, cock the hammer again and shoot it. And at long last, shot number 5. Now let's go look at the target and see how we did. Okay, here's our 50-yard target. And yes, that is 5 shots. And remember, that measures not just the rifle, but me. I was shooting offhand. If you take that variable out of it, these bullet holes would probably all be touching each other. And I was shooting a patched round ball. If you use something like a mini ball or a maxi ball, which are conical shaped bullets, it would be even more accurate. So muzzle-loading rifles are quite accurate. Okay, we've seen that muzzle-loading rifles are accurate, but how powerful are they? Well, frankly, not very. If you look at the ballistics, they're not that impressive. But ballistics are just numbers on a piece of paper, and they don't really tell you the whole story. Mathematically speaking, a bumblebee can't fly, except we all know that they can. So those numbers, although they tell you something, they don't tell you everything. So let's test our power, and we'll shoot these soda jugs lengthwise, see if we can get the bullet to go through all 4, and we'll compare our 54 caliber muzzle-loading rifle to our 1917 Eddystone in caliber 30-06. We'll see what kind of difference there is. Okay, let's start with the muzzle-loading rifle. Now this is 54 caliber, so it's a 5.30 ball, 225 grains, with 80 grains of 2F black powder behind it. Let's see what this does. Well, how'd we do? Obliterated the first bottle, put a 54 caliber hole through the second one. Didn't even penetrate these two, just the force knocked them off. So not a great deal of penetration, which is to be expected with a 54 caliber bullet that's made of almost pure lead. Now let's repeat that with our 30-06. This is loaded with a pointed soft point 150 grain bullet. Let's see what this'll do.
Well, here's the bullet out of that 30-06, and as you can see, it's flattened out pretty well. Now let's take a look at the jugs and see what it did.
Well, how'd we do? Pretty much obliterated the first jug, kind of obliterated the second one. Third one, it went in but did not exit, and when the jug split, the bullet fell out on the ground, and it was just laying on the snow right here, and then didn't penetrate the fourth one. So, did the 30-06 perform more than the muzzle-loading rifle did? Yes, but not by all that much. Is this really a highly technical scientific experiment? Not even close. But it is kind of cool to watch, and it does at least in some way illustrate that although muzzle-loading rifles are not as powerful as your more powerful modern guns like 30-06s, it wasn't all that far behind. Okay, the rifle was pretty neat. Let me show you another muzzle-loading firearm. This is a double-barreled 12-gauge muzzle-loading shotgun, and it's made by Fabri Armi F. Li Pieta Gassago B.S. Italy. Yes, I know I butchered that pronunciation. It's imported for Navy arms. Let me show you how this gun works. First, like the rifle, you store it with a lot of oil on it. You have to burn that out. I've already done that. Then you put your powder in. In this case, I use 100 grains of 3F, so I've got my measure adjusted, and I got my different powder horn that has 3F powder in it. A crucial thing of loading double-barreled guns, no matter what they are, is making sure that you get the components in the correct barrel. You got to remember which barrel you put it in. What you do not want to have is 2 powder charges in one barrel and none in the other. Once you've done that, you put your wad in. Now there's a few different types of wads here. Let me give you a close-up of them. Okay, here's a close-up of some of the components. You got your over the powder wad, and then your over the shot wad. This real thin one, all that does is just hold the shot in. There's a bunch of different ways to do this. I just use a thick wad. Now this has lube on it, which if you leave the gun loaded for a long time can foul your powder. So some people will tell you to put in one of these cards, and then the wad on top of that, and then your shot. Some people will say just forget the thick wad and just use 2 of these. There's a lot of different ways to do it. This is just the way I do it. Okay, so that's a close-up of what the wads look like. So you put this wad in, and they fit pretty tight. One of the things, modern shotguns have choke. Muzzle-loading shotguns can't because you have to load it into the muzzle. And yes, some of the newer muzzle-loading shotguns have some chokes you can take out, but that kind of works against the point of muzzle-loading. And just like the rifle, tap that down and you make sure it's tight. Normally I've got all this stuff in pouches and so forth in my pockets, but in the interest of brevity, I've got it out here on the table. Then we put in the shot. Now in this shotgun I use 2 ounces of shot. And what I've got here is 12 gauge shell that's just been cut down so it'll hold the right amount. At home I just weighed out 2 ounces of shot, put it in here, saw the right amount, cut it off. And again, crucial in the loading phase is remember which barrel you put the shot in. And if there ever comes a time in the process where you get distracted and you've forgotten what you did, just dump the whole thing out and start over. And now I'm putting in just cards over the shot. And you don't have to ram these down hard, but you just got to make sure they're all the way down. There you go. And then you're ready to cap, which, just like the rifle, you've got to make sure that when you put the cap on and seat those caps that you're pointing in a place that it's safe for it to go off. In double-barreled guns, when it comes to shooting them, the crucial thing is remembering which hammer goes with which trigger. I've seen a lot of people miss game because they cock one hammer and then pull the wrong trigger. And that's just something you have to get accustomed to in your gun. A really important safety tip is, even though I'm doing it right now, never cock both hammers. There's a lot of people that cock both hammers, decide not to shoot, and when they go to lower the hammer, they put their thumb on it and then pull the incorrect trigger and it goes off. Okay, with all that, let's shoot this thing. Muzzle-loading shotguns are a lot more powerful than people give them credit for. And because you decide how much powder and shot, you can upload them, download them, and obviously within the parameters of what's safe for the gun. And you can decide what kind of buckshot you want and all kinds of things. Okay, let me show you a handgun. This is a double-barreled .62 caliber muzzle-loading pistol. It is not a shotgun, it's a double-barreled pistol, and it's .62 caliber. Let me show you a close-up of what that bullet looks like.
Here's the ball this Howdah pistol shoots. This is a 375 grain .62 caliber bullet. I've got it next to this 9mm round for perspective. Remember, in the muzzle-loading days when you could only get so much velocity and you didn't have cool things like hollow point bullets, the only thing you could do to make your gun more powerful was to make it a lot bigger caliber. Hence, a lot of pistols were .62 caliber, there's .72 caliber, there's just some outrageously big caliber pistols.
In the early days of muzzle-loading, there was a lot of ingenious ways people figured out to try to get more than one shot. The simplest one, albeit the one that made your gun heavy and more cumbersome and more difficult to build, was having a double-barreled gun. I'm not going to go through all the thing of loading it because it's got the same caveats that come with a shotgun. An interesting thing with pistols, though, is most of them, of course, have a ramrod under the barrel. And they are a hassle to use. What I do is just get a ball starter that happens to be long enough that I can use it as a ramrod, and that makes life a lot easier. So without further ado, let's shoot this thing. This is a heavy gun. It's got thick barrel walls and it's double-barreled. But it's also loaded with 60 grains of 3F black powder with a 375 grain ball. So it does produce a decent amount of recoil. Nothing like a .44 Magnum, but you wouldn't want to shoot it all day. Now let's see what this thing will do to a soda jug. Okay, that was pretty neat, and like I said, the double-barreled pistol was just a way to get subsequent shots. However, near the end of the black powder era, the way you got subsequent shots was you got a cap and ball revolver, and that is a pretty neat thing to have. The problem with cap and ball revolvers, though, is that it is such a complex subject that I want to do a separate video just on those. So look for that one. How's that for a cliffhanger? So anyway, as always, don't try this at home on what you call a professional, and thanks for watching the Intro to Black Powder Guns video.